Choosing a partner is one of the most important decisions of your life, but how often do we actually prepare ourselves for that decision? This is something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, especially because I've avoided talking about this on this channel. Relationships. For a while I've made the conscious decision to step away from them, not because I don't believe in relationships, but because I started noticing things about myself that I couldn't ignore anymore. Every situation that I found myself in, it revealed something. And over time, I started to recognize my own anxious attachment in the way that I approach people. The overthinking, the need for reassurance, the tendency to hold on tighter than I probably should. And at some point, it clicked. You can't fix that by moving from one person to the next. If anything, you just carry the same pattern into the next situation, hoping for a different outcome. So I stepped back, and for the past year or so, I've spent more time by myself than I ever have. And what I've realized is something that most people don't talk about enough. Most people focus on what they're not getting in relationships, People don't want commitment, people aren't serious, people don't show up the way they should. Very few people take a step back and ask a harder question. What am I bringing into this? Where am I falling short? Because if we're being honest, being in a relationship isn't just about finding the right person. It's about becoming someone who can actually add value to someone else's life. And it's very difficult to do if you're approaching it from a place of need. If you're constantly in need for validation, for approval, or reassurance, you're not building something with someone, you're depending on them. And I had to be honest with myself about that. There's a difference between loving deeply and loving in a way where you expect something back to fill a gap within yourself. Both of them look similar on the surface, but they come from completely different places. One is grounded while the other is searching. And if you don't take the time to understand that within yourself, you'll keep repeating the same cycles. And this isn't just about anxious attachment either, If you're more avoidant, maybe your work just looks different. Maybe it's learning to open up more, to lean into connection rather than pulling away from it. There's no one formula, but that's why spending time with yourself is important, because you start to see things clearly. Your habits, your triggers, your strengths, your limitations. Spending time by myself has been challenging and uncomfortable at times, but it's been necessary. It forced me to sit with things I would have otherwise distracted myself from. Like, it showed me where I need to grow. And for the first time, I'm starting to feel what it means to approach something from a more grounded place, Another realization that comes with being alone for too long, you can get comfortable there. Too comfortable. And I think I'm starting to feel that now. Because sadly, growth doesn't just come from isolation, At some point, you have to bring back friction. You have to test what you've learned. You have to put yourself back in situations to see if you've actually changed or if you've just been thinking about change. And I think that's where I find myself right now. I'm not rushing into anything, but I'm more open, more curious. I'm willing to experience again without losing the foundation that I've been building. Because ultimately, I don't think relationships should come from a place of need. It should come from a place of alignment. Two people who've taken the time to understand themselves, choosing each other and not depending on each other. So I guess that brings me to the point I started with. Choosing a partner is one of the most important decisions you'll make. So the question, I guess, is, are you prepared to make that decision? Well, thank you for listening as always. I'll see you guys next week.